My name is Joe Gelb. Thanks for the opportunity to be speaking with you today. I'm from a company called ZoomIn, and our goal as a company is to help you to get closer to your customers using content. It sounds very simple, and it's not so simple, it turns out, and we'll talk about that more, specifically in the realm of Internet of Things. I come from Israel, and we have customers and partners here in Europe and in North America, but the company is based in Israel. And Israel is very innovative, particularly in the area of content and content development. In fact, Moses was the first one to download content to his tablet about 3,500 years ago, and from the cloud. And things were a little bit slow back then. It took 40 days to download all that content, but he was the first one. So we're very innovative as far as content. So the idea here is trying to concentrate on reaching customers or engaging with customers through the content and through the channel that they choose. So Internet of Things is basically, like Michael mentioned, is the system of interrelated devices that are on an internet. There can be devices, there can be people, but the idea is that be able to communicate with each other without requiring human-to-human or human-to-computer interaction. So we'll talk about that a little bit, what that means. There's a lot of different examples of Internet of Things devices that are connected. I was at a customer recently, and I said in IoT, and they started like, don't tell me about IoT. I'm like, why? They said, because all of our stuff is inside of a lockdown facility, and there's no access to the internet. It's like, what? Okay, so the idea is that your devices are connected to a network, to a control system. It doesn't necessarily have to be IoT. So if you guys are using products that are locked down in some facility, you don't have to turn off. Okay, so why should you care? I think Michael was mentioning before that the number of devices that are connected is rising by large numbers. And all those different devices cover all kinds of different industries. I think it's interesting that the manufacturing industry is probably leading in having this interactivity of devices. How many of you guys are working for like manufacturing type of companies? Wow. Only one. Okay. How about a few? Okay. You guys are bashful. How about like software? Okay. Great. Okay. So got it. Okay. So I think the goal is in general, is to deliver relevant content. Relevance is the key word here across all customer touch points. As technical writers for the past forever, we've been talking about how to take content and transform that to a PDF or transform it to a online help right? And then a few years ago, we were like, oh, we have to get it into a responsive design or some kind of responsive web help. But really, the focus is trying to make sure that content is wherever it needs to be. If a customer is coming to my website, to my documentation portal, they're calling up the support center, they're using their device, they're on a customer community. These are all different platforms and different ways that customers are interrelating with us. We have to make sure that the content is going to be there where they need to be. So we're going to be focusing on the IoT aspect of this. Okay, so how does IoT affect our devices? So we want to basically transform devices from being self-aware, meaning very often these days devices or machines are able to cry out some kind of error code or beeps or whatever it's going to be. So we want to transform devices from being self-aware to being self-aware and also communicative. And more and more these devices really are becoming communicative, where like Michael mentioned, they might have an error code and they can communicate what that error code is going to be. Now some devices actually might have a little screen, some of them might have a connection, some of them might have, we were working with a customer where they were like valves or something in this oil refinery. So if there's a problem, it started flashing. And so the engineer, what do we have to do? He has to try to figure out how many flashes per second, it's like insane. So they created a little app that you put the little thing, your phone next to the little thing, and it figured out how often it's flashing. Oh, error code 106, right? So, okay, but in any case, so these machines and these devices are becoming more and more self-aware as well as being communicative. And the idea is that we as technical writers want to take advantage of that. Okay, so let's meet Heather. Heather is going to be our archetypical customer today. Okay? Heather is a proud owner of one of these little Roomba devices. Do you guys have Roomba here in Europe? Yeah? Okay, they run around, clean up your house while you're at work or on the beach or whatever you guys do in Holland for having fun. Okay, so anyway, so it's running around and it stops and it beeps 6 times. So what's she going to do? Well, she's going to go to Google, right? That's what everyone does, right? Google is the most popular online help system in the world. Okay, so it goes to Google. She's going to type in Roomba 6 beep 6 times. And she gets an answer, or some answers, or some possible answers. And now she's going to start clicking around. And she's going to get a list of error codes. And she's going to keep clicking, and then she's going to get to some kind of troubleshooting procedure. Okay, and this is what she found. Now, if you read this as a technical writers, right, does it look like a troubleshooting procedure? It's like, a smashed down, troubleshooting procedure in one paragraph. Okay, along with, if you have this, do this. If you have this, do this. If you have this, do this, right? So it's kind of effective. I mean, she's probably going to solve her problem eventually, but I wouldn't say this probably not the best user experience. Would you guys agree? Yeah. Okay, so the idea is, but this is what we're used to now, and that's actually pretty cool, because a few years ago, we didn't really have Google, right? I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? So the fact that she was able to Google and actually find documentation on the Roomba site is actually pretty good. A lot of companies can't even do that, right? Okay, we want to make it better than this, though. So what's wrong with the scenario? Number one, Heather had to actually go. She had to be physically close to the device in order to interact with it. She had to switch between the device and the browser, okay, which is a little bit annoying. She had to manually type in the error symptoms, which is error prone, okay? She was exposed to competitive ads, so while she was typing in Roomba, like Roomba's competition one of the top saying, don't suffer with beeping Roombas anymore, buy my product. She was exposed to unofficial instructions, meaning some guy who was sitting in his house has said, when the thing beeps 6 times, kick it, 3 times, then it'll get back in order. There's no clear structure to narrow down the options. There was that one paragraph, okay? And there's no personalization on their particular model. How many of you guys are using any conditionalization and stuff like that and metadata in your documentation? Some of you? You've heard of it before at least, right? Like it's something that you could do, right? Okay, so consultancy group, decided that a large number of companies are trying to differentiate through a customer experience. I think we all feel that a lot of companies are trying to differentiate themselves by customer experience, and Heather did not have a very positive customer experience. So let's help Heather. Okay, so what should our goals be? Number one, I think the goal should be no more manual typing. Okay, number two, no more back and forth between the device and the browser. Provide some kind of concise answers personalized based on what device she has. Try to limit the exposure that she has to all kinds of unofficial information. Like you guys are writing technical documentation, so she should get that first, right? And also we want to collect analytics about so we can help that to make the product better and make the documentation better, right? You guys have heard of analytics before, right? So analytics is so a lot of companies are trying to get analytics about how your content's being used. How many people are able to find analytics about how your content's being used for Tech Talks? 2 people? 3 people? Is it really more of you or just 3? Okay, so it's something that we're hearing more and more about companies who are trying to figuring out how to remove themselves from uploading gigantic PDFs to a website and trying to get analytics about how specific topics of information are being used. And this is one use of information. So this is what we have, and let's take this and make it better. So number one, let's rewrite this as a workflow, okay? Now, we take that troubleshooting thing, that paragraph, and rewrite it as a workflow, then later on we can see we're going to use this in a very interesting way. How many people in this room are writing their troubleshooting procedures by themselves? Most of you? Who's writing? If you're not doing it, who's doing it in your organization? Okay. So a lot of companies that we talk to, like their technical writers goes to the engineer and they try to figure out, how to solve the problem. But in this scenario, what we can do is we want to get the actual engineers that support people to actually draw out these workflows. We can use those in documentation. So then I think about workflows. Number one, they can be adaptive. Number two, they can have very clear guidance. They can facilitate automation, like interactive type of leading people through interactive troubleshooting. They can provide precise analytics. So not only did I see the person read this topic, but here's the steps that they went through. These are the steps that they didn't have to go through. And then they start getting ideas about how often certain steps were followed in order to resolve the answer. And the last one is that we should try to get to the point where the subject matter experts are writing this. I know that Andrew and other people are very into, and a lot of organizations are into trying to get subject matter experts to write more content. And I think there's a way that we can do that. So what we want to do is try to get a web-based, okay, first of all, I'll let you know that this, I guess, full disclosure. So this is something that we've been working on, and actually is kind of working, which we think is important. The idea that you can have like a web-based workflow engine. There's a lot of workflow designers around, so why can't a engineer be able to draw these boxes and diamonds and arrows and turn that into a PDF, turn that into a topic, right? Like it did a topic or something like that, and that can go into your documentation. Okay, so that's number one. Now let's talk about this let's go through Heather's perspective again. You guys ready? Okay, so Heather now, she receives a push notification. What do you guys do in Holland for fun? You guys must have fun sometimes.
Go to a congress like this.
Okay, so you're at the conference and you were eating lunch before, and she gets this notification that her Roomba is stuck. Okay, so she's able to click on fix. I want to fix this problem. Now what happens? Now this automated or this interactive troubleshooting procedure starts kicking in. Again, it's not rocket science. We have XML now. We have interactive HTML5. We can put that in an app, right? So we're able to start letting her go through a troubleshooting procedure to go ahead and solve the problem. Okay, so she gets the information about the specific error. She's able to. We already know which device she's using, so we can give her exactly the diagram that she needs, not one that for some other model or a list of models. And then when she's able to get the error solved, then she's all finished. Okay, now let's kind of review what we saw. Number one, we saw adaptive and personalized workflows. So we have a workflow that was written by someone who should know better, right, how to fix this thing. We had a disruptive user experience. Disruptive meaning that, for the companies that are being able to provide this kind of experience as opposed to the experience that Roomba was doing. So that's already disruptive. It's from a customer experience point of view, we're already kind of going into the next level of creating happier customers. The documentation is made actionable. Okay, so it wasn't just a list of procedures, do this worked, yes, no, next step. But part of that procedure can be actually sending actions to the device and saying, you know what, based on I kind of went through those quickly because we don't have so much time, but one of the things in the step was, navigate, look in the video, navigate your device away, and if it clears itself, then you're all fine. So she was able to work itself out, and then and that's basically actionable. So she's able to use her app to go and actually get the device to do something. You're able to get the implicit and explicit analytics about what could be the problem, and analytics about what actually solved the problem. It can fit right into your toolchain. So those of you guys that are using XML, so we have XML and that can fit into your toolchain for CMS and for authoring and for review and everything else. Those of you who are not using XML and trying to build a business case, well, you should. So maybe this is a business case for getting more structured content into your organization. And we have support for web browsers and mobile applications. So let's talk about, it could be 5 or 10 years away, but I think we can get to this pretty, not so far away. So we have a workflow designer. The workflow designer created XML files, and that went to your documentation cloud. That can be your content management system. Okay, I see CMS. Down here we have the device. Okay, device has some kind of particular error code, and the device also knows the device status, maybe its version, and maybe the firmware it was on, all kinds of other parameters that, we were kind of talked very simply. We said, okay, Roomba 500, error code 106, but in reality, there's probably all kinds of other stuff on that device that can hone in on the problem a little bit more, in a much more fine-tuned way. So we have the device speaking its information or its context to an app. The app is able to go ahead and find information from the documentation cloud, which is, what's the non-sexy way of saying this? It's context-sensitive help, basically, right? In a way, that's what it is. It's like I have context here, and I'm able to go to my documentation cloud or online help or whatever you're going to want to call it, and to get context-sensitive help based on what's going on with the device, and be able to help. Okay, and then I'm able to provide start this interactive troubleshooting procedure. Now, how do I get this little thing on? Okay, so if we look at the bottom there, you guys can see the bottom of that URL? Okay, so in the good old days when we did, well, even now, when we do context sensitive help, well, how do you usually do CS help? Do you guys do context sensitivity a little bit? Did you used to? No one's talking. No one's admitting it. So with context sensitivity, usually you'll have like a little ID inside of your software that maps to your documentation, which is really a pain to manage those things, and also is not usually specific enough, especially if you have a lot of different products with a lot of reuse in your documentation. Okay, so being able to create the device, being able to create some kind of a URL like this, or use an API in order to create a string like this. Okay, product equals whatever, version equals whatever, error code, firmware. Who's using? Is this a technician or is it an end user? Okay, so Roomba is very simple. It's very simple. But if we're talking about the devices that Michael was talking about before, a larger device, then there's much more information that maybe go into how to get that specific context. Okay, maybe a technician, and maybe a technician with a certain certification level. Okay, maybe a certain geographical location. Some companies sell devices differently depending on where they're sold. For example, what's a good example of that? I was just in a conference in Ireland, and they completely drive on the wrong side of the road, right? So that's an example of a context of you have the same car, but the steering wheel is completely in the wrong place, right? Okay, so we all agree with that, right? I mean, we all drive. Okay, so if you're able to build this kind of a URL, right, send it to an API, then you're able to go ahead and, okay, now what's really cool about this, how much time do I have left, by the way? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Okay, what's really cool about this is if you look at it, it's based on taxonomy. Okay, people have been talking about using taxonomy for documentation, but it gets a little bit nebulous, right? So there's this like crossing between what's metadata and what's taxonomy. Okay, metadata usually is this idea of you open up a piece of content, like an XML content or whatever you're using, right? And you like brand it with certain information, right? Product equals, or version equals, or whatever it's going to be. Now, how many guys actually use metadata?
I love metadata.
You love metadata? Okay, but are you writing documentation content? You're writing marketing content.
I'm doing content strategy.
You're doing content strategy. Okay. Who else is using metadata? A few people, right? Now, who has fun applying metadata? You do? Okay. Okay, so one person. Okay, that's good. That's good. The problem with metadata is that it's some people think it's not fun.
Yeah, I know.
So the problem with metadata is that it forces you to kind of open up every single topic and then brand it with something. Whereas that topic actually might be used in different contexts depending on how you're publishing it, right? So if I have the same topic that's kind of looks differently, if I'm publishing it for the 500 version or the 800 version or something else, so the metadata is already kind of added. It's very difficult to keep that up to date or keep it in tune or synchronized with how that content is going to be used. Does that make sense? Okay. The thing with taxonomy is that you build taxonomy is kind of like this tree of facets. Like kind of, you guys know about an index entries? It's kind of like taking all of your index entries and instead of organizing them by alphabetical order, like ordering them using some kind of like hierarchical tree. Okay? And once you're able to create this taxonomy of terms, kind of like a master index that enables you to kind of hone in and tag up your content, then you're able to classify each and every topic and say, okay, this topic is relevant for the Roomba, for this version, for this error code, or what have you. And that classification, because you can actually do that apart from the content itself, right? That means you're able to actually change the metadata or change the classification of the content depending on how you're actually publishing or using the content. Does that make sense? Okay. Does it make sense? A little bit? Okay. So the way the classification is usually done is kind of like books. You remember the libraries where books used to have little labels? Okay, maybe this will have labels. I haven't gone to a library in a long time. But the idea is that you kind of stick a label on the book. And by picking a label on the book, you're actually classifying it. Thanks. Okay, so I got my answer. Okay, I got my answer. So the idea of classifying each of your topics in a way during the time when you're publishing it allows you to really hone in on how you're using the content and how the content can be used for these types of devices. So kind of peel back kind of put the whole story together. You guys are tagging your content using some kind of classification scheme, which should be hopefully easier than metadata, and also it should be in a way that you can change the use of that content based on the context of how it's being used. That's number one. Number two, you have a device who is expressive, is not only aware of what it is, but it can express what's going on with it and all kinds of information about that. Okay? This device is able to use some kind of API or at least shoot some information about its context to a control system. In this case, it can be an app, it could be a big network control system in a nuclear power plant or a oil refinery. It doesn't really matter what it is. And then you use this context to go and do a little bit more of a sophisticated context-sensitive help by pulling the right content out of your knowledge cloud. Make sense? The knowledge cloud can be for the context strategist people, so it can be technical documentation content, it could be support content, it could be a little video, it could be a service bulletin, it could be a lot of different things that are coming from your organization. Make sense? Okay, and then we have the idea of your XML-based documentation can actually send commands back to that device, and so your content can actually become actionable. Okay. Whoops. Main takeaways. Okay, number one, I think these are good takeaways. You guys will tell me after the talk. So number one, I think that Internet of Things has the possibility of disrupting the way you write and serve up the content. The content can be more personalized, it can be actionable, and it can be more proactive and adaptive, like Michael was saying before. The true personalization is made much more possible. The taxonomy and the classification is an enabler. Okay, so being able to classify your content in a much more fine-tuned way and allowing your content to be the tagging to be much more flexible based on how that content's being used is an enabler for making this personalization much more effective and possible. It's a great way to differentiate your product, whether it be next year, I bet you probably, like Michael said, 5-10 years from now, it's probably going to be much more ubiquitous, right? Is that the word? Ubiquitous means it's much more out there, right? But you can start differentiating your product or start thinking about that now. And XML content is an enabler for this actionable content. Thank you very much for your attention and your participation.